Hi, it's Mark Owen from Newsmark PR, the editor of Punchline magazine. Today I'm with Adam Henson, Britain's best known farmer, you're known as, mate. That's what I've got.
I think that's coming out of your voice, not mine.
Well, that's what I wrote earlier, you see. Britain's best known farmer, obviously a TV presenter and tenant of Cotswold Farm Park. Thanks ever so much for joining us today, Adam. Goodness, where do we start? I really want to talk to you about the business angle of the farm and all the rest of it. Now, if I remember rightly, you know, how long have you been running the farm? Did you inherit it from your father? What's the background story, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so Dad took on the farm tenancy in 1962 with a school friend of his, a guy called John Neve. They ran it as a commercial farm, and Dad started collecting rare farm animals in the late 60s, early 70s. And in 1971, they got the landlord's permission to open the Cotswold Farm Park, really to pay for Dad's expensive hobby with all his rare breeds. In 1993, he became chair of the Breed Survival Trust, and then from then on, the farm and farm park have sort of grown over the years.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit there. Could you just repeat that last bit, please?
Yes, sorry. It's saying that my internet connection is unstable. But do you want to start again?
Yeah, just do that last bit about your father and where you started from. I just missed that last bit.
Yes, so Dad took on the farm in 1962, yep. And with his collection of rare farm animals, decided to open to the public in 1971. So it was the first ever open farm in the country, and rare breeds conservation wasn't really being considered as an important thing. So he was a trailblazer, he was ahead of his time, but he was also very keen on communicating the story of food and farming and the countryside to the public that came to the farm park. In the first year, we got 20,000 visitors. Mum made cups of tea and sandwiches. They didn't know whether anybody was going to turn up. And now we get 160,000 visitors. I grew up on the family farm, was born in the house that I'm sitting in, and which is the tenanted house on the farm, and then succeeded the tenancy from my father in the year 2000. And we run a 1,600 acre farm, or 650 hectares, as a tenancy, and then also the Cotswold Farm Park is on a commercial lease. The farm used to be owned by Corpus Christi College, Oxford, but it's now owned by Dawson's Truck and Trailer Rentals, which is, Peter Dawson is our neighbour and owns an estate next door and bought our farm with me as a tenant.
Wow. So how many people do you employ at the farm now? Did you hear that, Adam? How many people do you employ?
So we have so on the commercial side of the farm, on the growing side, we have an arable manager and 2 machine operators. And then on the livestock side of the farm, we have our livestock manager with 2 livestock assistants. But on the Cotswold Farm Park, we employ a lot more permanent staff, but also seasonal staff. So we've probably got about 80 people on the books. Some of those will just be doing 1 morning a week. Some of them will be fully employed. During lockdown, at the beginning of the season, we had 53 people on furlough. So we're probably one of the larger employers in the region. And I run the business with a mate of mine. I went to agricultural college and then travelled the world and then came home. And the guy I travelled the world with is a guy called Duncan Andrews. From our travelling, he went and worked for the Agricultural Mortgaging Corporation. And then he went to the Isles of Scilly with his wife, and they ran a tenancy and holiday lets and did cut flowers and those sorts of things. And then eventually joined me on the farm. And in the year 2000, he bought into the business, and we're now 50-50 across the whole thing. And his business mind and attention to detail is a huge asset to me as an individual, but also to the business. He's a very, very good business partner to have.
I was going to say, because, when you go off and do all your TV stuff and, you're there in front of the camera, I always wondered how it works. Who is looking after the farm when you're away? It's obviously Duncan, is it?
Yeah, so Duncan oversees the sort of overall strategic management and overall higher level management of the business. But over the years, so we've got fantastic managers in lots of aspects. So our accounts manager, our shop manager, our food and beverage manager, our overall farm park manager, Kate Lord, we have, so we've got managers in lots of different positions, and then they have surrounded themselves with really good staff who assist them. And so we've built a fantastic team. And so I think that is one of our challenges, but also one of our successes is running a very good team and understanding how that works and the dynamics around a successful team. And with that comes reward from the work that they do as individuals, but also reward to the business. And so for me, being away from the farm, filming, I very much rely on Duncan, my business partner, but also those key managers. And he and I share up some of the responsibilities and the reports that come into us. So I'm very involved with the livestock, whereas he's very involved with the arable. And then we're jointly involved with the Cotswold Farm Park.
And it's the money, if you don't mind me asking, that you make filming as that part, does that all go into the same pot for the company?
It does indeed, yeah. So we have Henson and Andrews Limited, Henson being my surname, Andrews being his. That's the parent company, and sits below that is the Cotswold Farm Park. And my media money, my TV money, and also the earnings that I get from some corporate work and bits and pieces that I do, all goes into the pot. So, in the balance sheet, there's lamb sales, crop sales, and, in there's a line for filming.
And what about the autobiography I've got here? Is that part of it as well?
So I've written 4 books now,
yes.
and there, yes, all of that money goes in. And I have to say, when I applied for a job on Countryfile, my partner Charlie, she persuaded me to apply, and I had a conversation with Duncan at the time and said, look, do you think it's a good idea? My dad had done some television work, and it was fantastic for the Cotswold Farm Park. It's a great marketing tool. Even though we're not allowed to mention the Cotswold Farm Park on the BBC, we can mention it as much, wherever else we want to. And we agreed then that whatever work comes from being on the television, if I was, there was a slim chance that I may be successful getting the job, that would all go into the farm. So we had that agreement right from the outset, and it would be really awkward and very, very difficult if he was busy running the farm and the farm park and I was away filming and then pocketing the cash from that.
Yes. I would imagine your business partnership wouldn't last too long if that's the case.
It would have ended a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask what the turnover of the company normally is in normal times, or was?
Yeah, so it's around 2.8 million. So, a significant turnover. And but this year we're going to be lucky to hit 2. COVID has hit us very hard. About £800,000 short. And as you well know, and what a lot of business people who watch these webinars will know, and the saying that turnover is vanity, profit is sanity. And so we're very conscious about our costs. One of our major costs within the business is our labour, and so we really need to make the most out of our staff and make sure that we're offering a really good experience for our visitors, but also really being very good at farming. So Martin, our arable manager, has precision farming at his fingertips, and accuracy and timeliness is absolutely key. In the world of agriculture, you're controlled so much by the weather, by outside forces, by crop and animal diseases, by political change, by exchange rates that are out of your control, that you really need to control the controllables very, very carefully.
I mean, you've had not being funny, the weather has been 1 minute pouring down with rain, next minute, I was reading somewhere before that, there's a shortage, it might be shortage of potatoes, the prices going up, you couldn't get the crop in, was it wheat? Couldn't get the crop in the ground early enough, and obviously then it's soaking wet. It must be an absolute nightmare trying to work around that.
The growing season has been 2019, 2020 has been very, very challenging. One of the worst years I can remember. And you speak to lots of farmers around the country. it's been, you know, horrendous, and it's hit the news, it hit the headlines. And so that wet autumn, where there was flooding across many parts of the UK, was very, very difficult for arable and vegetable growers to get their crops planted. And so a lot of the ground didn't get planted. It got moved into the spring, and then we planted spring crops instead. And then they were growing well, and then we hit that horrendous drought. You know, people who were, you know, stuck at home during lockdown, the weather was actually very pleasant. And if you were lucky enough to have a garden to be able to go into, you know, a lot of people were lying in the garden sunbathing, where the crops were dying in the fields and the grass was drying up and Britain was turning into a desert. Then the rains did eventually come, but unfortunately it had affected the cropping in a serious way. So our yields of our wheat and barley and oilseed rape, those arable crops, are depleted by between 25 and 30%. So quite a significant knock on our arable business in a year when our tourism business has also taken a big hit. So there's been quite a lot of pain in farming, and for farmers who have diversified. So lots of farmers have turned away from conventional farming, diversified to have a different income stream that they hoped would be lower risk and more controllable. But no one saw this coming. You know, if you'd converted to a caravan site or an equine centre, or you'd set up a wedding venue or an Airbnb, you know, they all came crashing down with COVID. And many people, including ourselves, have recently invested significant amounts of money in their farm diversification, and that has proved incredibly challenging.
I mean, you're right. It's right across the board, isn't it? I mean, it touches every single business, and everybody that I've talked to recently, unfortunately, they will be letting people go. It's you know, there are obviously companies that do very well. There are always companies do well in war and famine and all the rest of it. That's the very nature of the business, isn't it? But I've never, well, we'll never ever see anything like this. Well, I hope not anyway, where it appears every single sort of business sector is affected by it. You know, who would have thought the avionics industry, the aviation industry, would be hit so hard. Here in Gloucestershire plays such a big part. But going to what we're talking about in the big green issue and part of the publication that we're putting together, obviously the environment is playing a big part. We just talked about the weather. But do you feel, you know, the diversification and is this going to be the time now? Do you believe that there's going to be the turning point? You know, is it going to be that this stepping stone is going to change? More people get into solar, more people get into, you know, all the other different types of, you know, environmental energy sources and all the rest of it. And how would it affect your business?
Yeah, I think there's two things there. I think there's the population, the public. How will they think about their lives and how they run it? And you know, watching the David Attenborough documentaries, you know, how can we as individuals do the right thing and make a difference or play our part in helping to save the planet, thinking about our own health and wealth and well-being, So I think it does seem to be there's a change in mindset through a certain section of society and those sorts of individuals that are considering that. And I don't think that's a class thing by any stretch of the imagination. It's just where your mind is and what you're thinking about. And everybody, you know, wherever you're from, you can certainly make a difference by doing the right thing. And then there's the businesses that are having to consider that. And it's right across the board, from you and I to aviation to the motor industry to, you know, manufacturing. Everyone is now having to consider it, and rightly so. And farming has a very big finger pointed at it for having a large impact on the environment, to having a large carbon footprint through animal production, but also through cropping. So as agriculturalists, we're looking very, very carefully at what our carbon footprint is and how we can best manage that and alleviate any damage or problems that we're causing to the environment. And this isn't a new thing. We've been thinking about it for the last 25, 30 years. So on the farm here, we're in a higher level stewardship scheme, which means we manage the farm very, very carefully. So our field margins, our hedges, our trees, our water courses, We have to audit very, very carefully all the pesticides we use, so all those crop protection products, our fertilizers. So that's all managed and audited and very, very carefully thought about. And part of that is government legislation. But also then we go further than that, that we use precision farming. And so very, very high technological methods of producing and growing animals and crops that make it very accurate and precise, as I alluded to earlier. So our drill, for instance, that's planting oilseed rape at the moment, will have the field would have been mapped and zoned up, so we know the different soil types within the field. Our agronomist, the person who advises us on growing our crops, will give us the right amount of seed that we need to be applying to those different soil types, but also the right amount of phosphate and potash and ammonium nitrate, all resources that are going to run out one day and can be damaging to the environment. And ammonium nitrate is made out of natural gas, made out of oil. So we don't want to spend too much money, but we have to be careful how they're positioned. And as the drill drives down the field, there's a satellite dish on top of the tractor that's talking to the satellite dish in space. There's an onboard computer that's talking to the drill that's planting the seed and delivering the fertilizer. And as it moves across the field, it speeds up and slows down the rates of both, so that it goes into the soil zones and therefore optimizes the yield potential of that soil. And so just by doing that, we have a significant saving of those products. So that is good for the bottom line, but that is also protecting the environment and managing the soil very, very carefully. And soil management is becoming much more in vogue. It's something that the organic movement, people like Prince Charles, have been talking about for a very long time. And there's a huge amount of talk about the way we manage our soils, our microbial activity, but also then the way we manage our animals and what we feed them and how we breed them. So it's all happening. One of the difficult things in agriculture is we don't have at the moment a very good way of measuring that. So is our farm here better than our neighbours? How do you measure the two? And then how do you do something about it if you're not looking that good? And those are the measurements that the agricultural industry is now striving and driving towards to make us more sustainable and greener.
Going to sort of a sort of business fund, talking about in some ways, your competition, it must annoy you when you see, packets in Sainsbury's of eggs or beef and they come some sort of made up farm name, I won't say who they are, but we all know. Of course, the general public don't know these farms. Do you think that's okay? That's just marketing, or do you think that's just underhand? The government should do something about it. We've all seen it. Potatoes from so and so farm and eggs from so and so farm and beef, and they don't exist. These farms.
I think it's atrocious and completely underhand and drives me absolutely insane. And so I've been working with a brand called Happily, set up by Matthew Reimer, and trying to get to the bottom of truth and trust and traceability, provenance in the food supply chain. And we're not saying to people, you need to buy British or you need to buy local, but do by all means if you want to, and that's a great thing to do. Just let's be honest about where your food comes from, so that there isn't disingenuous packaging or labeling on products on supermarket shelves or any shop shelves for that matter, or in your local pub or restaurant. There's lots of rules and regulations about labeling on food, and so actually you're probably better informed if you're buying it from a shop than you are necessarily when you're eating it from a pub or restaurant, because on their blackboard it might say something, but you've got no idea what's happening in the kitchen.
Right.
And so
yes.
It might say beautiful Hereford beef from Adam's farm, and that might not be the case, and you've got very little way of checking that. And so what Happily is doing is getting people happily assured, and then they're auditing it and checking it and making sure that what people say they are doing is true. And I'm a big fan of that.
I mean, do you think the government should fine these companies, or should it be a rise up of the general public? I mean, how do you stop it? At the end of the day, because it is false advertising, the way I see it.
Yeah, so I think the trading standards industry have got quite a lot of work to do. I think government already have a department looking at food fraud, and it is, huge amount of work to do. If you think of the amount of food that's coming from abroad in containers, how do you check all of that for its provenance and its labeling and its safety? What pesticides, what antibiotics, what farming uses were used to create that food that's piling into the country. That is one massive challenge. But also then internally, how do you check and measure all the methods and uses within our own country? And so, yes, I think it's a massive piece of work, and having the resources to be able to do that for government is a challenge. But it is essential. We've seen COVID sweep across the country and the damage that has caused, and the nation did a huge amount of work. Everybody worked really hard to protect the NHS so they weren't completely overwhelmed with poorly people and people dying. But if we allow our food to come in from countries from abroad where they don't match our standards, particularly when it comes to food hygiene, antibiotic use and safety, then by doing that, we're putting our NHS at risk because there will be antibiotic resistance and those sorts of things. So, what we eat is what we are. That old saying is very, very true.
Yes.
Our health is completely driven, well, not completely, but very much driven by what we consume. And that is something we all do. We all eat and drink. And, I eat all sorts of stuff that isn't particularly healthy, and I drink beer and I eat burgers and all that. So I'm not trying to be a health freak. I'm just saying be really conscious and careful and thoughtful about what you consume. And that is essential for us as individuals, but also on a large political and health scale.
Is this bringing us back to the chlorinated chicken again? Discussion that we had last time. I mean, obviously, the government is in the negotiation with Brexit. It's getting rather heated. Then you've got the American deals and all the rest of it. What's your thoughts on that, really, Adam, and the way that's progressing? I don't want to get into the Brexit argument. We're not going to talk about that, but the actual, like you said about food provenance and the way that other countries, where do you think that's all going to take us? What do you hope for?
As a food producer in the British Isles, you as a farmer, we all want to be able to produce food and be on a level playing field with other countries where we import food from. So there isn't competition on the supermarket shelves or any other shelves that makes ours look expensive because we care. And that is a major problem for British farming. If in these trade agreements, British agriculture and food production isn't protected, it could be incredibly damaging. And so as agriculturalists, as farmers, what we have in this country is incredibly tight legislation. So that's for the way we manage the environment, as I just mentioned, the way we manage our waste, the way we manage our inputs, but also our employment law, our health and safety directives that we have on the farm. Everything we do is rightly so, really carefully monitored and measured, and we try and do the very, very best thing by all our animal welfare and all those sorts of things. If you buy food from abroad, it may be some of those things, it may be all of them, but it may be none of them. So there may be food coming in from other countries where their human rights is atrocious, or it might be that their animal welfare is appalling, or that their abattoirs are terribly run, or they may be using animal protection products, antibiotics, crop protection products that are illegal in this country. And that is a travesty. So I was filming on a farm the other day where they produce oilseed rape oil. So rapeseed oil is a fantastic product and it's great for roasting potatoes and salad dressings and all those sorts of things. A lot of farmers in the UK growing oilseed rape are struggling to grow it because of neonicotinoids that you coat the seed with have been banned, because the research has shown that when the plant comes into flower, it affects the bumblebee, the bees that fly around, it affects their navigation. So that has been banned in the UK, and the farmers now are struggling to grow oilseed rape because it's all getting eaten by flea beetle.
Right.
And what is happening is there is rapeseed oil and other vegetable oils coming in from other countries where neonicotinoids aren't banned. So they're still damaging their bees and causing travesty over there, and we're consuming it. And so we're basically just saying, okay, you can't do it over here, but let's just export that problem to somewhere else in the world. Let them get on with it, produce the food. And then what's more, let's reward them for that by buying it from them and putting our guys out of business.
But what do you do about the bees, though?
Well,
I'm not
advocating that we bring the neonicotinoids back. Absolutely not. No, I'm happy as a farmer to use other techniques and methods, which is what we're doing to try and grow the crops successfully. And rightly so. You know, time is changing times. You know, when science proves that something shouldn't be used, let's stop using it.
Yes.
What I'm saying is, if we're not allowed to use it, we shouldn't be importing products from other side of the world that are using it. Let's put our checks and measures on our borders and with our political agreements and trade agreements that doesn't allow unfair trading.
Well, I totally agree with that. So moving forward, there's a couple of, I thought I'd ask you a few, sort of going back to the business sort of side of things. First thing is, are you working in Countryfile anymore? You've got some more stuff coming out?
Yeah, so I'm filming with Countryfile every week, usually filming on a Monday and Tuesday, and quite a lot on the farm here during lockdown, but now we're getting out and across the country. And that's going really well. Countryfile is still a very successful program, getting very good viewing numbers. So 5 to 7 million people tuning in every week. And they, I think, have managed the filming process and getting a weekly program on air very, very well, with all the right COVID protection in place. And, you know, I think the management team have done a great job there. So that's still going well for me. I'm just about to start filming a new series that is going to be called Our Family Farm Rescue, when we go around to farms across the country, looking at their diversification, looking at the problems they may have on their farms, and you know, how they're going to alleviate that and get through potentially some difficult times ahead. So that's exciting to be taking on a slightly new project. And on the Cotswold Farm Park, you know, we're continuing to work hard to entertain and look after the visitors that have come pouring back post lockdown, and we've had a very, very successful few months, having been shut for 3.
So if you had a whole room full of business people here in front of us, can you give us your top 3 tips for businesses?
So for Duncan and I, we've got a mate who works in marketing and PR, and he helped us come up with our branding for the Cotswold Farm Park. And he sat us all down, our team of managers, and said, right, we need to come up with your mission statement, your vision statement, and your value proposition. And we all sat there thinking, what does this mean? We're farmers. And basically it means you need to come up with what your values are, what you believe in, who you want to deal with, what's your language, you know, who are you communicating and working with. And so we now have that on our wall, you know, what are our brand values, and we refer to it. And I think it keeps you in the direction that you want to go in, and you're not tempted down the line where you may be following something that isn't as sustainable as you want it to be, or you're just running after the money and you're not really sticking to your core values. We all want to wake up in the morning and go to work because we're confident and passionate and love what we do, but also with a clear conscience. So I think it's really important that you have those brand values and you have those written on the wall, and then communicate that with all of your staff and surround yourself with the right people who want to join you on your journey, because it's their journey too. And that has been incredibly powerful and helpful to us as a business. And then we use a consultant, a guy called Tim Thurston from Team I, and he helps us work with our team to make sure we're all doing the right thing, that we've got the right tools and equipment and resources and knowledge and experience to be able to complete our jobs correctly and work together as a strong and powerful team. And he uses the sports analogy for that. And it's very strong and works well. Hey, we don't get it right all the time. We have our challenges and we have our difficulties, but that would be my advice.
Adam, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. Thank you very much, and good luck with the filming. And one last thing, I've got another book coming out. 4, is that it?
I have. I've got a children's book.
Oh, right,
coming
okay. Give it a plug.
Yeah, to help educate children all about food and farming. It's going to be printed in the spring. But in fact, and we hadn't organised this before, everybody, we're launching it today. So
okay. Got a copy there?
In the spring.
Can you show it?
I haven't got a copy because it's not printed yet.
Oh, right, okay. What's it called, Adam?
So it's called Adam's Farm.
Adam's Farm.
And it's for 4 to 9-year-olds.
Yeah.
It's a book where you turn the pages, but you also lift flaps to find out what's inside the combine harvester. How do potatoes grow below the ground? What future technology might there be on farms with drones and robots and computer-generated tractors? So it's a real book about real farming, but in a fun and interactive way for young children, because I strongly believe that the children of today, the parents of the future, if they've got a better understanding of where their food comes from and how it's produced, then they can make the right informed choices about what they consume and where they buy it.
Adam's Farm's got a nice ring to it.
Thank you.
Good luck with that, Adam. Always nice to talk to you, sir.
All
Cheerio. Bye.
Okay.